Hello and welcome to my channel, I Win to Lose Gaming. Today we are doing a quick full character guide on Hu Tao, ranging from builds, artifacts, weapons, with a lot of math, as well as some teams rotations, and I guess some general sentiment on this character, Hu Tao. Now this video was filmed before her banner, so I do not have Toma at the moment, but we do have a character very similar to Toma, and that is Xinyan. The first most important part of this tutorial is how to make Hu Tao do all the cute things that she does. The first thing is to press E. You'll notice that she sticks her tongue out when she does that animation. And the second thing is to do her full normal attack combo. Do the full normal attack combo, and she will clap the spear away. There we go. That's the most important thing about this character, and honestly this guide should be over now. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Win to Lose. Anyway, let's hop right into it with the basics of the character, aka the talents and stuff. Now, if you're already familiar with Hu Tao's talents, I do have timestamps below so you can skip ahead, but maybe there will still be something in here that you might learn about her. Anyway, I want to start off with this talent actually because it ties into the next talent I want to talk about. When Hu Tao's HP is equal or less than 50%, her pyro damage bonus is increased by 33%. So in other words, that pyro damage bonus is listed right here. And when her HP is under 50%, like it is now, we can see she's at 1,687 HP. She gains 33% pyro damage. Very simple, straightforward, and also a very powerful ability as well. And next, let's actually take a look at her E, which is probably one of the most important parts about her kit. And what her E does is that it subtracts 30% of her current HP, and then it increases her attack by 6.85% of her max HP. So if we look at her stats right now, we can see that she has 1,061 attack with a Dragon's Bane equipped. And if I use her E, she now has 2,798 attack. And if we do some math, we can see how that is indeed 6.85% or whatever of her max HP, plus 1 because of rounding errors. You know, Genshin Impact in game only shows decimals up to 2 places, but in reality, it's actually decimals up to 3 places. Alright, so what this E does is that it lasts for 9 seconds, provides her with Pyro Infusion, and when she hits things with her charge attacks, it applies a Blood Blossom, which does 128% damage, which scales off of the attack stat on her character page. Yeah, and it also has 16-second cooldown, and finally when it ends, it provides 12% crit rate to the rest of the team. If you start at 100% HP, the first E will bring her HP down to 70%, and the second E will bring her down to 70% of 70%, which is 49% of her HP, and thus activating this passive as well. So in other words, in situations where you start off with full HP with Hu Tao, you will have to do 2 E's in order to bring her down under 50% HP to get this substantial damage boost. But of course you can always find ways to take damage as well. Okay, and one more thing about her E that's important is that right now we have her E up, but if you swap off of her and swap back, the E infusion will end. As you can see, her attacks are no longer pyro. But now her teammates like Amber, Kazuha, and Xingqiu will have that bonus crit rate for 8 seconds, I believe, which is from this talent. But really this bonus crit rate is just a very small bonus, and it's not really something to kind of build her kit around or to use her for. Now that we understand her elemental skill, Guide to the Afterlife, let's next talk about her normal attack, Secret Spear of Wang Sheng. So her basic attack when you just mash left click has 6 hits in it, and her charge attack is when you press and hold the left mouse button, obviously. And what's important about this is that it is a very high DPS option for her. and it is one of the highest single target DPS options in the game. At Constellation 0, you will be doing a lot of hop cancels like this, and at Constellation 1, you'll do a lot of dash cancels instead. Of course, at C0, you can still do dash cancels, but you will run out of stamina very quickly. Now, my Hu Tao is, well above Constellation 0, so of course, this is not necessarily accurate if you're Constellation 0 trying to do a charge attack. And another combo option is N3 charge attack. This provides Hu Tao with more area of effect damage and spends a lot less stamina. The next ability to talk about is Hu Tao's Elemental Burst. Generally speaking, you want to use it when she has her E up for the massive attack bonus, and as well as when you're under 50% HP, which is this low HP skill damage, which does 706% damage. This Elemental Burst swings around her in a 360-degree range, and it has pretty large area of effect in my opinion. A very nice large AoE around her, and of course the burst costs 60 energy, and there really isn't too much else to say besides the fact that you generally want to vape or melt it. Another thing about her basic attack that I forgot to mention earlier is that her N1 as well as her charge attack have no internal cooldown when it comes to applying pyro. So this allows her to vape every single hit, assuming the enemy has Hydro on them with a character like Xingqiu, or just, if they have Hydro on them like a Hydro Slime or something. Now that we understand her kit, let's go ahead and take a look at her artifacts. And for Hu Tao, we really want to consider 3 types of damage. The first type of damage is Vape N1C damage, which means normal attack 1, charge attack damage, and you vape it. And the next type of damage to consider is Melt Burst damage. And typically the goal with this is to do as much damage as possible with her burst. And the next thing to consider is finally just her raw pyro damage. There are some situations where you just may want to do some raw pyro damage, and that's it. So knowing that, we should take a look at this chart. And the first thing that stands out to us is the most recommended artifact set, which is the 4-piece Crimson Witch. And that will also be the baseline for this chart. But the 4-piece Crimson Witch is a great balance for all 3 types of damage, but in particular, it is the best balance for vape damage as well as melt damage. In fact, providing almost the highest in both categories for vape and melt damage. So the Shimena's Reminiscence is the highest potential charge attack and normal attack damage for Hu Tao, but as you can see, it only barely performs a little bit better than the 4-piece Crimson Witch. And one drawback of the Shimena's Reminiscence is that if you ever need to use her burst immediately after using an E, well, that's basically impossible because you lose 15 energy when you use her E. And looking at the remaining options on this chart, you can see that now we're just mixing and matching artifact pieces. And when it comes to just pure reaction damage, you can pretty much just mix any of these 2-piece options that benefit her damage in some way. So why is it that these 2-piece options are in here? And it's because of farming artifacts. So when you farm for artifacts, and we can actually look at those domains really quick, when you farm for the Crimson Witch of Flames, you will also be getting the Lava Walker set. And sadly, the Lava Walker set today is pretty antiquated. In my opinion, in today's day and age, farming this dungeon is far more valuable than farming the Crimson Witch, because the Emblem of Severed Fate is such an amazing artifact set, and so many of you guys have the Raiden Shogun as well. And also, as you can see in this chart, that the Shimena's Reminiscence is still Hu Tao's best option for charge attack damage if that's what you primarily plan to use. Let's move on next to the weapon options for Hu Tao. We're going to start with the Staff of Homa, but the Staff of Homa is by far Hu Tao's best in slot option, especially when she's under 50% HP. So the Staff of Homa at Refinement 1 will be used as the baseline for this chart, and we're going to compare it immediately just to another weapon, the Primordial Jade Winged Spear. So the Primordial Jade Winged Spear, even at Refinement 5 and 7 stacks, barely does more damage than the Staff of Homa when you have more than 50% HP at Refinement 1. So yeah, that is just how crazy that the Staff of Homa is. But another problem with Primordial Jade Winged Spear is that it takes quite a while to build those 7 stacks. You have to attack for a long time, and by the time you actually get the 7 stacks, your E infusion is almost over. One additional benefit to the Primordial Jade Winged Spear is that it does have the crit rate substat right here. And Hu Tao is generally a character that is often missing a lot of crit rate, basically getting it entirely from her artifacts or from her Constellation 6, which most people don't have. The next weapon to talk about is the Dragon's Bane, and this is probably one of the more free-to-play friendly weapon, especially if you've been lucky over the course of your play through Genshin Impact. You may have a lot of these weapons. But anyway, as we can see that this weapon does about 87.6% of the amount of damage that the Staff of Homa does when you're under 50% HP. So when I'm talking about the Staff of Homa, I will assume that you're under 50% HP. Unfortunately though, the Dragon's Bane falls far behind when it comes to melt damage. We can see here that the next weapon is the Deathmatch, and I actually personally recommend this weapon arguably over the Dragon's Bane. What's more important about the Deathmatch is both its crit rate substat as well as the fact that it does do better melt damage than the Dragon's Bane, and the crit rate substat will really help Hu Tao reach a nice crit rate to crit damage ratio. The next weapon to talk about is the Black Cliff Pole. The Black Cliff Pole has crit damage as a subset, so you'll see huge crit damage stats on Hu Tao, but you may struggle to get that crit rate up. Even at 3 kill stacks at Refinement 5, this weapon gains about 11% damage on Hu Tao because attack percent isn't as impactful on her as, for example, other characters, because she has low base attack and her attack stat is already very high when she uses her E. And I figured I would do the math for the Wave Breaker's Fin, which I don't have right now. As you can see, the Wave Breaker's Fin does terribly for vape damage as well as for raw pyro damage, but it does do very well for melt burst damage only. So as for the other weapons that are in this game, we have some like the Vortex Vanquisher, which I don't even own, but that thing is usable. It's a little bit worse than the Primordial Jadewing Spear overall. And really, if it's not on this list, it's not really a recommended weapon. There's one exception to that, and that is the Lithic Spear. The Lithic Spear is a pretty decent option for Hu Tao, especially if you run, Zhonglei, Xingqiu, and Hu Tao, which is 3 from Li Yue, and then you can get a 4th one like Ningguang for the double Geo, or you can just scrap that and bring Albedo. It's just that not a lot of people actually have this weapon. Now let's talk about Hu Tao's Constellations. So Constellation 0 Hu Tao is still an amazing character, able to output tons of consistent vape charge attack damage, as well as still to hit some pretty impressive nuke. But we can go straight to her Constellation 1. So let's quickly talk about a Constellation 1. This one removes the stamina cost from her charge attacks. Basically, you're able to do about 10 to 11 charge attacks with dash cancels instead of the 8 to 9 that you would do with jump cancels from full stamina. And the other important thing about Constellation 1 is that when you have low or no stamina, Constellation 1 is very valuable because you are able to still do charge attacks versus not being able to do them at all. Now her Constellation 2 adds 10% of Hu Tao's max HP as flat damage, which still can crit, and it still scales with bonus damage as well. Now her Constellation 3 is a good constellation because it just gives her a lot more attack. And going from talent level 9 to talent level 12 because of this constellation will bring your Hu Tao's damage up by about 8% with no other external buffs. And next is her Constellation 4. This constellation is really difficult to notice, but it can lead to more consistent, for example, nuke runs or making her teammates to crit more often after she kills an enemy or something. But generally speaking, this is not something that I ever really notice. And her Constellation 5 provides 3 levels to her burst. This gives her burst another 16% more damage on top of the 8% damage that her Constellation 3 provided. So by Constellation 5, her burst is now hitting for 24% more damage. And last and definitely not the least is Hu Tao's Constellation 6. And what her Constellation 6 allows you to do is to stack as much crit damage, HP percent, and elemental mastery as you possibly can. And this can lead you to about double the amount of damage that you would have otherwise. And I guess I should tell you what it does, but when you get under 25% HP, Hu Tao gains 100% crit rate. And generally, the most consistent way to proc this is by hitting E 4 times with Hu Tao. This will bring her under 25% HP. And you can use this once every 60 seconds. Now it's important to note that in Abyss, when you retry a floor, you have to wait the entire minute in order for this thing's cooldown to come back up. So next let's talk about Hu Tao's teams. Now when you use Hu Tao as a main DPS, you typically run her with Xingqiu, because Xingqiu can provide Hu Tao with the most reliable and consistent vapes in the game. And one very popular team archetype is Hu Tao plus Xingqiu plus double Geo. And this provides her with Geo Resonance when you have a shield, which is very nice. It adds 15% bonus damage. And on top of that, Albedo, when he uses his burst, provides the entire team elemental mastery. Either Albedo or Zhongli can use either the instructors, tenacity, or noblesse oblige. Whatever combination of artifacts works for you. Me personally, I like to build these two instead for damage, but if you play them in support roles, any of those artifact sets that I mentioned are good options for them. One benefit of this team composition is just how easy it is to use and how reliable it is. Zhongli's burst obviously provides some amazing crowd control, his shield provides amazing survivability, Albedo provides very nice passive damage, and finally, Xingqiu provides good hydro damage, good hydro application, and allows Hu Tao to vape all of her charged attacks and as well as her burst. This next team composition has overall higher damage output, especially during a short window, and this team utilizes Amber with elegy support, and she is able to also provide Xingqiu with double vape. Finally, we have an animal character like either Sucrose or Kazuha, who will really amplify their damage even more. But of course, I only really recommend this team if you have the elegy for the end on Amber. Her Constellation 6 is nice as well, but let's be real, most of you guys don't have her Constellation 6, but if you do, you can consider that as a nice bonus for this team. Now, the next team to talk about is similar, but there's more survivability with it. And when Toma comes out, of course, you will probably want to use him over Xinyan, but the two of them provide very similar role in the sense that they both give Hu Tao a nice shield. Now, of course, their shields are nowhere near as durable as the double Geo setup with Zhongli, but what they do allow for is they allow for pyro application prior to starting the whole rotation. And what that means is that Kazuha can Viridescent Veneer shred pyro on the enemy, and then Xingqiu can do his stuff to apply hydro, and then Hu Tao can follow up with a lot of pyro damage from her vape charge attacks. Now the next team or core is something like this, where Hu Tao can be used as a sub DPS, and she can be paired with a strong cryo DPS like Ayaka or Ganyu, or even in some situations Eula. And this also pairs Hu Tao with a cryo teammate, which allows her to do even bigger melt damage numbers. The other two slots are actually very flexible, and generally you want to bring whatever characters make the most sense. For example, you can bring Mona for more explosive, immediate damage to the two of these characters, with Mona, for example, applying Hydro and Omen, and then Ayaka freezing them, and Hu Tao doing a huge melt on those frozen enemies. Alternatively, you can bring Xingqiu for a longer, more persistent, more reliable Hydro application, and it will allow Hu Tao to vape her charge attacks after Ayaka's done doing her stuff, or even before Ayaka starts doing her stuff. And the last team slot can go to honestly anyone. And this type of team building will require you to kind of know the situation that you're dealing with and to build around that situation and to use the last two team slots as appropriate. Ooh, okay, so that was a lot of information to go through. I know this video wasn't scripted, but hopefully you guys found the information and the math and the numbers helpful in this video. Also, I regularly make Genshin Impact videos ranging from Caesar showcases, DPS showdowns, guide videos, and more. So be sure to smash the subscribe button, as it's the best and easiest way for you to support my work. Also, don't forget to like the video and leave a comment for the YouTube algorithm. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Win to Lose, signing out.